Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with RICS for over 13 years now. My role here is to look at the impact of AI, data and technology right across the built and natural environment, and with over 110,000 members working worldwide, right across that land and property cycle, all the way from land use itself, planning and development, construction, brokerage, valuation, finance, building operations, building surveying, and indeed end of life. It's a huge, rich tapestry upon which data and tech is having a very profound effect. And indeed, our members also work across all the major asset types, whether that's land itself, residential, commercial, alternative assets, and infrastructure. And I'm really glad to have a quick return visit from Harry from BuildPrompt again. I know we spoke a few months ago, but it's nice to get you back on and once again, I think, talk about the hot topic of the moment, which is AI. But for those of our listeners and viewers who didn't see that last video, it'd be great if you could give us a bit of a quick sort of summary of your backstory and a bit of an introduction to BuildPrompt, Harry.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for having me again, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And so BuildPrompt is an AI company. We help organizations primarily in the built environment create private AI solutions where they can build with us on top of our platform to solve real-time data problems that they've got. My background is very much focused on the built environment, working for house builders, construction companies in project management style roles. And before BuildPrompt, we launched a snagging inspection app that's been used across the built environment called BuildScan that's got over 2 million images logged. So we got a really good view of how data was going to impact the built environment and the RICS members ultimately.
Thanks, Harry. Well, I guess, I mean, we were chatting before we started this discussion and actually started the live recording that, you know, clearly AI has very much kind of captured the zeitgeist, the kind of the atmosphere around AI, not just in the built environment, but more broadly with the advent of generative AI, despite the fact that obviously other forms of predictive AI have been with us a long time. I mean, how would you describe, you know, the current state of both adoption of AI and understanding amongst RICS members and the broader real estate sector?
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting moment of time that we're sitting in now where some people that you'll speak to, Andrew, when you're going around doing your talks and so on, you'll find such a mixed array of people's thoughts and perceptions, willingness to adopt and so on. And what I'm seeing is that we seem to be at a point in time where I think there's a real desire to use AI. There's a real want of people not wanting to be left behind by others using AI. And yet there's still, probably for the right reasons, the fundamental fear around, you know, what are the risks? You know, where's my data going? And I think that we're in an interesting point now where that inflection point is happening. You know, we kind of finding the equilibrium point, and that point may last a little bit longer, where still people are more on the cautious side. But certainly we're now getting more and more companies in the real estate market coming to us with newer problems that are more ambitious, that probably a year ago they were thinking, no, we'd never use that data within AI because of the risks. And so now they can be more accounted for, and the data integrity and the transparency around that can be better accounted for. I see we're starting to get to maybe a tipping point.
Indeed, and as you said, I mean, you know, both of us talked to a lot of people in the market, and I go out and do a lot of presentations now, given the interest in it. And as you said, I think there is a degree of unevenness, if that's a polite way of putting it, in terms of awareness and the degree of education different people have. I mean, what are, in your view, are the sort of common misconceptions or knowledge gaps about AI that you've seen amongst professionals in the sector? And I guess how can we overcome those gaps?
You know, I think a lot of them are founded amongst any kind of tech, innovation, where people basically, you're either on the part of the curve where you've jumped straight into ChatGPT, you know, and you've used it for a lot of things, you've tried it out, or, you know, you're sat in the middle where you've heard about it, you've used it once, but couldn't really see an application because, you know, it wasn't immediately obvious to you. Or, you know, you're just kind of waiting for the market to move and then, you know, you'll play catch up, which all three options are fine, of course, and everyone has a different approach. I see now that the main barrier is that it's now people kind of thinking of how it can solve a problem. There's so many ideas out there, so many different products out there, so much noise out there, it's almost a bit overwhelming. And so we find that a lot of people are kind of thinking now, Well, yes, I understand that you can create an image. I understand that you can ask a question and brainstorm with ChatGPT, but actually, what is the tangible value that I can have for myself? And so I think a big part of it is as things move along, the education on what is the art of the possible is, and maybe talking about more case studies, more ways in which organizations or individuals have benefited from using AI. I think that's going to be a big piece on the education side, because it was the same when the internet came out, right? Maybe Andrew, just maybe you'll remember this a little bit better than me, but when the internet came about, there was like just a load of nonsense on there, and people were just putting everything on the internet of no value. And then the other things started coming up. The yellow pages went online. Oh, that's quite useful, and so on. And so I think we're in a similar kind of point now where bit by bit we're seeing really exciting use cases.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a great example of falling into the trap of thinking too much about the technology and not about the actual use cases, because it's not technology for technology's sake. It is, it's a means to an end. And I suppose on that theme, what's your view in terms of at the moment what the most promising areas are from a kind of benefit and opportunity perspective for our ICS members and our sector? Where do you think those early kind of killer apps, to use the phrase I think that was used around the internet and things like that?
Yeah. What's really interesting is that, back on the point of barriers, I see that often, like organizational inertia is really a thing, where, an organization will look at what previously happened and looked at how they work and be scared to adopt new technology because of the risks associated with that, and maybe the previous experiences with adopting technology. Mainly because so much of the technology out there that companies use is so fragmented that systems aren't talking to each other, and so I think that people are often saying, well, we can't use AI because we've got data over there, we've got data over there, we've got this system that manages this for us, and so on. So I think people are blocking themselves from using AI because of the fragmentation of data. Well, actually, what we're seeing is that one of the best possible use cases for AI is connecting things together, connecting data sources together. And so it's actually a perfect opportunity where, if you've got fragmented systems in your business, to use AI to help plug those gaps together. It may need a bit of thought, but certainly data management, using it, in kind of basic forms of like ERP type of systems, connecting different, if you've got SharePoint over there, and then you've got, Google Drive here, you've got then, handwritten notes over there. Actually, you can upload, most data types into AI platforms. Certainly in BuildPrompt, there's kind of areas where you can do that, and start connecting the dots together that were previously not able to connect. So that's certainly one area. Some of the other areas that we're seeing a lot of advancement is around property search, property valuations, being able to find more accurate information. One of the key things of what AI does well is pattern recognition. So, everyone's used like Zoopla and so on, where you got like estimates for house pricing markets and all this kind of stuff. So AI has been in that area forever, for a long time. Now we see it as actually that it's much more consumer ready, and so more and more people are using systems to piece together data and go through a process where they can basically have better transparency on the market, understand what prices are being sold for, what that means for the market in a few years' time, looking at trending reports and comparing data in a more substantial way. So certainly that area there. I think a good way to look at AI overall is that this kind of mini ecosystems being created. So if you think about data management, you think about looking at the data of the market, the valuations, you can then start predicting, having that predictive analysis. If you can predict how markets are moving, that means you can generally get a grasp on what customers' kind of questions are going to be asking. So therefore, you can automate customer service. If you can automate customer service, then you can probably start automating parts of the property management process. And so if you go around the whole kind of cycle, then there's a number of really exciting tools that are coming about that are focused on different areas that are really helping that. Another area that is really interesting is how digital twins are now a new world of that. I mean, there's a really exciting company called Open Space, American company, and essentially it's a camera and a hard hat, and it's looking at it's constantly taking 360 images of the site, stitching that together. As AI advances more and more, there's more and more things you can do by looking at the digital twin versus what's actually happening and more accurately assessing that information. So again, we're seeing some really exciting stuff around construction, real estate, and so on, being able to pick up things similar to what Matterport was doing, right, where you're then detecting differentiations between what was supposed to be and what is happening, and piecing that all together.
No. Well, it's fascinating to hear some of those kind of more concrete examples, and I think particularly interesting the way you talk about the fact that AI often is, when I say hidden, but hidden in a good way, that it's delivering that kind of foundational role of stitching siloed data sets together and providing that kind of foundational work, using that word again, to make sure that data is much more accessible given the state that the data is often in the sector. And I guess you also mentioned that whole kind of property valuation and appraisal piece there, and I'm keen to understand a bit more how you see that really being helped by AI, and also I think particularly thinking then of what the implications are for our RICS members working in that valuation field, because obviously we're well aware of many existing AVM, automated valuation type models in the residential sector, which tend to be probably a lot of them not necessarily AI, if one is going to be pedantic, more kind of hedonic statistical models. But interested to hear your thoughts on that whole valuation practice area.
Yeah, I guess it ties nicely into accuracy and a human doing a job, and versus a computer doing a job. Now, I don't think that AI is yet replacing completely people, and I think that the key thing here is that people will become better and better at using AI and computer systems, hopefully, and people won't be replaced but enabled. As cliche as it sounds, but I really do see that as the route. Kind of valuations and appraisals of properties. There's definitely a human part to that. I think that when you think about how AI works, again, pattern recognition, piecing data together, you can take what is currently quite mundane manual processes of finding specific data, tracking back to find, previous sell prices, understanding like the local market. Now it's easier than ever, using even things like Zapier, tools that can connect different products together. You can connect different data sources together. Make.com is another really popular tool that is great at plugging different pieces of data together. So AI can help improve the efficiency and the speed in which people can do valuations and appraisals. That means it can ultimately improve the cost effectiveness of that process, reduce the labor costs around doing that. That ultimately drives consistency, because if you're automating processes and the humans then in the role of checking the work of the AI, then massively drive down value through improving the consistency. And then that ultimately opens more opportunities to spend more time on, capturing more leads using AI, right? So you're kind of tying it back there where you save time utilizing tools and AI. You're still not taking it away from the human element of the job, because you have to check over it. You're not just going to dish out everything that AI writes straight to your clients, for example. And then you've opened up more opportunities. You've got more accurate, more consistent ways of piecing together data to value properties and so on, and then from there you're going to have to much more easily predict what's going to happen, predict the market, because if you it's the same as anything, right? It's the same as people who do trading. Once you get used to seeing more and more around the different things that AI can do, and you look at the market trends more and more, and you allow yourself to see market trends better because you're using AI tools to look at a wider array of data connected together, then you're going to start being able to yourself detect the trends, probably even before the AI, right? Because there's always the human element of being able to see based on your own experiences and piecing that together with it. So again, it's like merging the human element with the computer, if you like.
Yeah, and I guess that's a strong theme that I like to emphasize, that I think that these are complementary pieces, that the human and the AI, rather than a kind of zero-sum game in that way. You mentioned earlier the kind of property management area, and I'm keen to understand what you're seeing there around, whether it's lease extraction or contract management, document management, or even, dare I say, chatbots or other ways of communicating? And what sort of activity are you seeing with AI in that whole property management space?
Yeah, it's really interesting that the property management, facilities management, and the overall kind of life cycle of the building. Chatbots have been around for a while, right? And there's you can put in data. You kind of have human-enabled chatbots, which is like the computer starting the conversation. That's getting better and better. And so, but what we're seeing is that whether you're thinking about, you mentioned the lease there. I mean, for us, that's a big focus is leases, because before, there's significant costs of, if you've got many leases, for example, the process currently of writing them, drafting new ones, and so on, is pretty mundane and costly. So now, again, if you've got a back catalogue of leases that have been written for your company, and then you've got a new lease to write, it's much easier to look at all of the trends that are across those leases, all the best points, label them as this is great and this was not a good clause, that didn't serve us well. Then being able to write a new lease becomes much more simple, because you can use like retrieval augmented generation to pull out the relevant parts to then build a new lease. And that's definitely an area we put a lot of focus on. In terms of property management more broadly, people living in buildings and putting forward the problems that they have, and relaying that to the right person. Again, CRM systems now are becoming so advanced that the dots that are being connected were previously not connectable, now are. And that means that if you're living in a block of flats, often now there's apps where you can engage better with the landlord, where you engage better with other people within the building. You can find out more about events that are happening, emergency situations that are occurring. So people are centralizing that data into often white label platforms that feed through as like a CRM system to capture information. And then when it comes to defect reporting, again, people have got a much better view. It used to be that it goes into a spreadsheet over here, oh, this person flat 10 reported a problem. Now, again, you can automate that process. Okay, well, we can validate the fact that this person lives in this property. They've put forward that there's a defect or an issue, a later defect that's occurred. Do we need to send someone to investigate the item? Or is it just so basic, they provided a picture that we agree it and we'll get someone to fix it? And again, AI can now help track that kind of information to say, well, this person's mentioned the word leak. That means there's a priority word there. That means that we can better or more acutely direct a team member to go and investigate it as soon as possible, because that kind of term was used. And so then people build their own reports of like, this triggers this. This person will get, if we have a SLA, that means that you have to be replied to within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, again, that's flagged. All this stuff is becoming more and more advanced. And so each part of that life cycle now is being managed better, from the more generic property management through to customer services, and even more smart property management, which I'm happy to touch on around like IoT and actually monitoring of the building.
Indeed. I guess what one last use case area I'm kind of keen to talk to you about is the whole area of kind of transactions, really, where I do a lot of work, particularly with land registry and other stakeholders, around looking at the conveyancing process on residential property in England and Wales, and there's clearly a huge challenge there on those transactions, where you're having to do an awful lot of due diligence, and this is the same obviously for commercial real estate, where you have title and other data sources where you need to do a lot of due diligence to decide, either as an individual whether to move forward with a transaction, or obviously on a secured lending or a asset management perspective on commercial real estate. What are you seeing once again in terms of AI helping with that kind of due diligence transactional environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's again, it's a really good point around that whole process there being massively affected. It does come back again, a lot of it, to the way that data has been paired together, and how much more simplified that process is. So buying and selling properties has always been quite a slow process. Due diligence is a critical part of that. And I guess now, what's coming about is how people are matching data together more quickly, to solve that problem. And so there's various tools that are coming about that help enable that. You know, I've not used a load of them myself, to be honest with you, but there's quite a few different areas where people can now view trends more easily within a certain area, find more quickly people to do surveys on the property. You know, if you've got the process, never mind before AI, which accelerates even more, but if you've got a property and you've got concerns with, let's say, something like Japanese knotweed, the process now of dealing with something like that is so much more advanced and provides such a more instant way for you to, first of all, find the people to help survey it with you, find the information on the repercussions of that, manage that process, make sure it's documented better, and go through that process is massively accelerated. You know, touching on AVMs, which you mentioned before a little bit, it's again, it's the different data points and the characteristics of the property as a whole, looking at it as more of a asset with, you know, looking at the historical sales and so on, and assisting the buyers being able to make a more informed decision. And I think that's the main thing there, is just the process of enabling people to make more informed decisions by collating more data from more variety of sources, enables individuals or organizations and people like yourself to make, and everyone to make more informed decisions of how they will purchase a property and the things that they will look out for. You know, even now you can use systems. You know, if you're a complete layman, never bought a property before, the process of finding out, okay, what do I need to do to buy a property? You know, how do I go through the conveyancing route? What's going to be the implications? You know, what is a mortgage? How does it work? You know, is it a commercial property? What are the implications? You know, can we do HMO? All these things, all these questions would require a significant investment in time to even understand where you begin. You know, now there's products like ChatGPT, you know, on the more broader thing, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and other large language models that anyone can go on and use straight away, with pretty much no barrier to entry, and say, I'm buying a property in the UK, and there's, you know, what are the key things I need to be looking out for? And Perplexity, I'm not sure if you've had a play yet with Perplexity.
No, not yet.
It's a really good one for validating the information. So it pulls out all the relevant news sources and puts in front of you with evidence every single reason why it's pulled that. So, you know, some of it was from Martin Lewis's website, some of it from the RICS website, pieces it all together and provides you with a more rounded view of how you should be approaching that. So particularly as a beginner in the real estate world, it's really, really valuable.
Indeed. And looking ahead, Harry, I mean, if we think about the kind of, you know, the RSS profession and our members out there in the sector, I mean, how do they, you know, they have a day job, so to speak. So I mean, how do they actually stay ahead of the curve and get ready for the increasing role of AI? And I'm also thinking particularly about the fact that there will be, you know, impacts on job roles and the kind of skills required. So what would your advice be to an RSS member who you know, has a day job there, they have a business to run, a service to provide, but they do need to keep their eye on this and make sure that they don't miss out on the benefits, but also know what the implications might be for their and their staff?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think the first one, biggest, easiest one, Andrew, is to follow Andrew Knight on LinkedIn, because lots of seems like you know, you're putting yourself in a lot of places and a lot of conversations with the right people, me included, and there's a lot of value to be had by, I think, listening to podcasts, listening to people talk to others, looking at you know, who are the RICS and engaging with. You know, if you're an AI company and you're working in real estate, you know, who are the most prominent organizations in real estate? Okay, well, you start with the RICS. So if you've got a tech product in AI and you are aware of the RICS, you're probably going to do what we're doing, which is, you know, trying to have a conversation with the RICS.
Exactly.
Getting on the tech partner program. So I think certainly following the right people on social media platforms is, although very simple, very obvious. I mean, even us ourselves, you know, we can do data science research and find new ways to work with companies to solve their problems. But also, if you go onto Twitter and you type in AI, you know, the most advanced people in the world, the CTOs of these multi-billion-pound AI firms, are on there posting their honest thoughts of how the market's moving, what's happening, what their thoughts on where things are going, and so on. And so we see that as a really valuable way to capture information and learn about the market. And then I guess other ways, you know, is to actually get stuck in a little bit. You know, you don't have to be spending a load of money on AI tools. You don't have to be putting in really secure private data into AI tools. You know, have a play with products like ChatGPT and Perplexity. Understand how they benefit you. You know, Gemini is now about Claude. We use, you know, it's a really interesting product that is really good at natural language. You know, ask questions. You know, for us as a business, but with BuildPrompt, you know, we get questions all the time from people who not necessarily, you know, are coming to us saying, you know, we've got this grand problem we want to solve. We want to use your platform to solve this problem. They're just saying, oh, what's your thoughts on this area here? And you'd be surprised, you know, how open people are to talking and giving their advice. So I think getting stuck in, talking to the right people, following the right people on social media if you use social media, and listening to interesting podcasts really will keep you ahead, much further ahead than most people. And just be aware as well, I think, big bit of advice I've learned is that most people are just talking. You know, so don't be scared by the fact that people are saying that they're doing everything, because most of the time they're not.
Indeed, and I guess it's a huge question to ask you next, Harry. But and it's something I certainly talk about. Is the whole area of ethics and the kind of responsible use of AI. I mean, you know, what would be your sort of top considerations from that kind of ethical dimension that you would think that RICS members should be keeping in mind? Because this, for me, is very much about, like any wave of technology, a kind of responsible and ethical approach to using a tool that like any tool can be misused or can affect stakeholders in quite a negative way if things go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge topic. You know, I do think, again, there's a lot of talk around ethics and the potential problems that can occur. And I think there's a lot of information out there on how you know, you should and shouldn't use AI. I think a lot of actually it is common sense. If you know, you've got to think that you know, you'd be most of the time very happy to put something in SharePoint or OneDrive that is secure information. Okay, it's safe. So if you're giving that data then to something like ChatGPT on Azure, for example, as part of like an enterprise thing with that, then, you know, if you're willing to put it into your SharePoint, then it's not a million miles off putting it into ChatGPT. However, you know, if you don't, I wouldn't go further than that. I wouldn't be thinking, well, you know, I'll put everything down, I'll put all my secure data, all my emails in there, put everything straight into ChatGPT and get it to write everything for me, because I don't think we know enough yet to be able to properly articulate if that is a risky move or not. Because you know, there was something that happened, I think maybe about 5-6 months ago now, where someone figured out that if you tell ChatGPT to repeat the same word forever and keep telling it to do it over and over again, eventually it started spitting out its training information, and its training data was actually you know, what other people had been writing into and getting responses from. So my point there is that first of all, be like sensible. Don't put into a publicly accessible product like ChatGPT, Claude, and so on. Don't put super secure information into them, because we don't know enough yet, and there's not enough guarantee on that data. Those companies are pretty much making those guarantees, but be cautious. Where we kind of support companies is around that private AI solution. So hosting the power of that ChatGPT, you know, in a closed infrastructure, you know, that is definitely more safe. But also be cautious and be fully aware of what that means. You know, are you going to be able to take that data away? You know, will it be used to train? You know, will it be used by other of your competitors? You know, for example. So just have full visibility on exactly where you're putting your data and who you're giving it to, and don't put anything into an AI that you wouldn't put in your SharePoint or your Google Drive and so on, because I think it's just, we don't know enough yet, and not enough time has gone by where all the risks and implications have kind of opened up. So I think that's definitely the main area, and I think that then I think actually creating establishing, for if you're a company, you know, establishing some more you know, concise kind of processes in your business is important. You know, people especially larger organizations, people are using different AIs to do different things, and they think it's fine. Like, no one's ever going to read this email, no one's going to read this bit of data. For us, we're very careful about that. And so I recommend other companies being careful about that, being very vocal about what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, because the baseline is, oh, well, if I use ChatGPT, it's going to save me time, make my job easier, so I will use it. But be super crystal clear on what you're allowing your team or employees to upload there, so everyone's singing off the same hymn sheet. I think is really, really, really important. And I think, there's a whole depth of going into ethics of AI, but certainly I think that the fundamentals are, be logical about it. We don't know enough about it yet. If you can't see where the data is going and no one's guaranteeing you where that data is going, then don't put anything in there that's not redacted. And just be careful about, as you would be if you wouldn't share it with somebody else, then probably avoid it with putting it into any type of AI.
Yeah, and I guess the other point on a more fundamental nature as well is just being very careful about thinking about who's affected by the decisions of AI, so that one's really clear about the impact of the decisions that come out of AI and who they're affected by, and think about those those potential reputational risks, or as I say, the kind of people who are affected. I guess as a final question to you, Harry, I mean, as you know, I work very much to kind of collaborate with tech firms like yourselves, and I guess it's a fundamental final question for me is really how RICS and the profession can work with firms like yourselves, because clearly there's this element of the existing profession trying to get their heads around AI, how they can use it, what the risks are, how to manage all those risks, but yet at the same time get the benefits from it. But really, how does the tech sector work best with an established profession like RICS?
Yeah, I think there's I think things are still new. I think that people should be educating themselves. Like you made a great point before about about how people stay ahead of, or at least in line with the curve, ahead of the curve. So I think that the first process is just being aware of what's out there. I think that learning about the different case studies, for example, with us, like I touched on, if there's situations where there's generally a large amount of data, such as building regulations, or standards, contracts, leases, and so on. Think about, there's a lot of data. Maybe it's one large source of data or repetitive of many types of data. Then there's some really cool ways that companies like us are helping organizations manage that better, make more informed decisions, make decisions that where you're aware of the ethics. Touch on the other question. You made a good point there about the output of the AI, and being aware of maybe the implications of just following that blindly. For us, it's critical that evidence is at the core. So again, looking at tools that make sure that if you're using data to find, curated pieces of data, you've got questions to ask, for example, or you're automating the review of data, that you're making sure that you're not completely just removing the human element from it. And so I think a big part of it is thinking that, if there's areas in your business or is an individual that you're spending a lot of time repetitively doing certain work, then get online, have a look around what products are out there, speak to people like us, if companies have data problems or they're curious as to what's out there, we won't necessarily just say use BuildPrompt. If there's tools out there that are solving problems we're not, then by all means we'll share what kind of stuff we're learning about. And I think that by just taking it step by step, not kind of fall into the trap of almost FOMO, right, and just using anything for any reason is really important. And then I think that if you start really taking it step by step, contacting the right people, find different versions of BuildPrompt, send them an email, send us an email about maybe a data problem you've got, then I think that you'll be, just as with any purchasing decision, you're about to make it as informed as possible. And you're about to then go onto the the RICS tech partners and look through there and think, oh, I've heard of that company, I know that company there, and I think then you'll be in a good spot to be able to start making really curated decisions for yourself and your business on how you can use AI in the best way possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make there, particularly around kind of looking at perhaps just an initial business issue and using that as a pilot rather than trying to kind of boil the ocean and digitize and AI your whole process. It's worth kind of dipping your toe in, and perhaps experiment's the wrong word, but certainly piloting with a small issue that you can demonstrate the value of it rather than jumping in head first, as it were.
Yeah, that's it. And for us, Andrew, we've we created the company in 2019. We started, as I said, with BuildScan. We then launched BuildPrompt last year, and we're working with quite significant companies. I mean, not all the exciting work we do is just with the larger companies, but the reason that we're doing that is because we are doing pilots as well. Because you can resolve a lot of the fears by saying, look, actually, let's prove, as a company for us, we like to prove ourselves first by saying, look, let's do a 3-month pilot. Let's look at a specific problem you've got. Like you say, let's not boil the ocean, go too far in, because much easier to grow into something is to actually know, we're pulling that out, pulling that feature back, pulling that use case back. Just start with a real fundamental problem that is actually going to be the biggest, quickest win, is actually going to make an impact. You're not doing it for the sake of it because you've got FOMO, and you've really properly assessed the market to understand what is possible, and that way you can make a buying decision that you'll be, I think that you ultimately will not end up regretting.
Indeed. Well, good advice, Harry. Well, it's been fascinating to chat once again, and I'm sure our next session probably won't be too far away given how quickly this particular theme is working across the sector. But for today, thanks ever so much for your time. Fascinating conversation, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks again, Andrew, so much for having me. Again, more than happy to answer any questions people have. You can catch me on LinkedIn, to check out BuildPrompt. And yeah, again, thanks for chatting, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Pleasure.